Traveling the Vortex. Side Trip.
Join the Doctor as he travels the vortex and arrive at Christmas. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn, and it's Christmas time.
Merry Christmas.
We're doing a Christmas special.
Yay!
Season's greetings. Happy holidays.
Well, this week we're doing a special Christmas special. What we did is we decided that we'd look back at the Christmas specials, and what we're going to do is we have each sat down and decided what our top 5 favorite Doctor Who Christmas specials are, and the criteria for these is they have to have been broadcast on Christmas Day to be considered a Christmas special. So we did not include The Unquiet Dead, although unofficially it is Christopher Eccleston's Christmas special, but it did not air on Christmas Day, and it wasn't set up as a Christmas special. The other one that we did exclude that does fit the criteria of airing on Christmas Day is The Feast of Stephen, which is the first Doctor story that takes place in the middle of the story arc for the Daleks' Master Plan. It did air on Christmas Day, but we are not counting that because it wasn't technically intended to be a Christmas special, and that's just happened where it fell in its scheduled time slot. So,
And it's unavailable.
it is unavailable, although they do have some really good reconstructions of it. So
And only Glenn has seen it.
I have seen it. So it gets an honorable mention, but it can't be included. So. All right, well, we're going to do that. We're going to do our top 5. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pick the Christmas special. It doesn't necessarily have to be in our top 5, but what we're going to do is our Christmas special that we feel is the most Christmassy. And then we are also going to pick what we think is the worst Christmas special. Now, all of these are good. Don't get us wrong. We are the all who is good who. And I don't think any of us hate any of the Christmas specials. But the one that probably is our least favorite, and that if we were to if we were to compile an entire list, this would be the one that would be at the bottom of the list. So top 5, bottom, and then the most Christmassy.
Excuse me.
Sean, you want to start, or you know what? Let's just do this. Let's step through each one from 5, counting down to 1, and we'll just say what each one of ours is. So starting with number 5, the 5th best Christmas special, in your opinion. This is just our opinions. This isn't fan consensus. This is just us, because you know how much
agree with us, you're wrong.
You know how much we like to rank things. So
which is never. This is how much we like you guys, because
we're going to rank
week
these
for Christmas.
things.
We're doing a ranking. So
Special event.
So who wants to go first? Number 5.
Number 5 for me is The Next Doctor.
Any reason why you think that
Cybermen?
Cybermen.
And it's despite kind of the sad aspects of Jackson Lake, it is a fun story.
I just rewatched.
It's campy, which is always good at Christmas.
I just rewatched it recently. In fact, I rewatched most of these recently, and I think I've always been kind of down on that one. I think because of the Cyberman aspect
There
of
are
it. And
elements of it that don't work, but
to me, the big giant Cyber King marching through London still bothers me a bit. But on a rewatch of this one, I think there are a lot of good elements to this. It's probably most importantly is the fact that it's got a lot of heart. Mm-hmm. We've got Jackson Lake, who's recently lost his family, doesn't know it, has been accidentally implanted with the identity of the Doctor from the timestamp, or data stamp, sorry, and and basically him going into this, denial of having lost his family. The brain does strange things. The Doctor points out that, a data stamp can only do so much. This is your brain trying to bury something. And I think the message there is pretty cool. So,
well, and for me, the giant Cyber King is just that over-the-top Christmassy aspect of it. Just like the Arachnos, Empress of Arachnos in Runaway Bride is that kind of over-the-top camp that you expect from a Christmas special. That's what the Cyber King is for me. And the Cyber Shades.
That's still my biggest problem with that. The Cyber Shades make no sense whatsoever.
I scratch my head at those, but I just kind of, okay, whatever.
And I understand
Christmas.
the limitations of not being able to use a bear or a dog or something like that, which would be absolutely cool to cyber convert an actual animal.
Yeah.
But the things don't even act like bears or dogs or whatever they tried to explain them away.
Cyber bears. Yeesh.
That would be terrifying.
Sean, what's yours?
Believe it or not, it's the same one.
Oh, is that right?
It is as at number 5 for many of the same reasons, not Cybermen per se, but I love the Cyber King. I know you hate it.
I don't hate it.
You hate it.
I
don't care. Giant robot stomping around Victoria. This is so cool. And I sat there with this big dumb grin on my face.
I think what makes the Cyber King work is the fact, for me, and again, watching it this time, is when he describes it as a dreadnought ship. I think that's where
that was
he does.
The little thread that you
that's
needed.
the little thread that I needed to go. Okay, it's not really a giant robot. It's a ship. It's a vehicle for them. But
there's little Cybermen inside. They're walking on their treadmills and paddling things and moving.
No, clearly the Cyber King, or what's her name? I can't remember the woman's name that's controlling it. Is
Cyber Controller? Yeah,
controlling it. But
now, admittedly, you're talking to somebody who I know it's a bad movie. I unabashedly love Wild Wild West. I don't care. I'll fight anybody on that one. And it's got a giant spider in it.
It's a fun film.
So
this has got a steampunk kind of aspect to it.
I think that's where it ties in.
If you like steampunk, it's gonna really hit those buttons for you.
I also love the Jackson Lake bit. I bit hard into that mystery when it aired that maybe Morrissey was going to be the next Doctor, and we were getting a sneak peek of, which it's kind of a shame now that he's not going to be a Doctor, because I think he'd have been a very good one.
Yeah, he would have.
But just overall, I think it's a fun story, and I think it fits very much in line with, especially the RTD era, of what the Christmas specials should be. Is just kind of big, bombastic, a little over the top, and a lot of fun.
It's definitely one that we finally got to actually see actual snow at Christmas. Mm-hmm. That was the very first one that had actual snow at Christmas. Granted, they weren't in modern day London at the time; they'd gone back in the 1800s.
And it's a Dixonian, what's the time frame? Victorian.
I think it's Dickensian. No, it would be Victorian. No, it would be Victorian London.
It's Victorian London, which the BBC does so
Dickensian.
well.
It would have been Georgian, I guess, is the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's yours, Glenn?
Mine is actually Last Christmas. I like the inclusions of Nick Frost. I went into that one a little trepidatious because Sean and I especially have talked about how even with Doctor Who we want a little bit of realism or scientific explanation for something. And so when they say, well, as much as I love Christmas, when they say Santa Claus is going to be in Doctor Who, you kind of go, okay, what's the gimmick here? What's the catch? Where are we going to go with this? And it really sets up on the level of, no, this is Santa. This is Santa and his elves. And they don't try to soft sell that to you. They just do it. They throw it at you. But then to realize as you start to peel away the layers and find out about these things, these face huggers that are inducing dreams and putting them in these dream worlds, it really seems to work, and it wraps around. I also like the symbolism or the things they've borrowed from Aliens, the concepts that they've brought from that. We've got a base undersea story, which can sometimes be done wrong and can be detrimental, but sometimes it can be done right. I think this is one of those situations where it's done right. I also like the kind of the Inception type layers of it, where when you think you're out of the dream and then later find out you're not. And then I also like the heartfelt moment there when he visits Clara at an older age, and the wonderful line that he says is that, I don't remember exactly how he says it, but I don't. He says, "I don't see you as older." He doesn't see her that way, and I thought that was a nice moment. It also has that nice, warm, Christmassy ending there, riding in the sleigh, just. The Doctor even kind of just accepting it, even though we still are implied that it's still part of the dream. I like that. I like the growth that I think the Doctor has in that story, and Clara does as a character as well.
It's actually my number 4.
Ooh. Well, let's move on to number 4.
For all those exact reasons that you said,
timing.
Predominantly because of Nick Frost as Santa and his elves are so enjoyable to watch. And then bantering with the supporting cast of Shona and all the others, and getting.
I forgot about Shona. Yeah, she's another.
She is so fantastic.
Not to mention, I got a little crush on Shona, but
just the banter with Santa and the elves, and the level of enjoyment. It's kind of a grimmer story for Christmas time, but there's so much Christmas in it that you overlook the grimness to it, and the dreamception aspect of it is just, I think, really spot on. The only downs part of it for me is I wish we would have ended Clara's story with her being old instead of that extra tacked on ending. That's the only thing that sours it for me, because even when we get the initial, before we realize it, in the first dream where she's with Danny is such a perfect ending to that relationship and for that character, that it wraps everything up so nicely that it's just another perfect aspect of the story.
I think it's an unfortunate, maybe have been, and I don't think the Moffats ever actually come out and said, but I think it was maybe an unfortunate situation that they were still working on Jenna Coleman's contract as to whether she was actually coming back. And so I think Moffat was able to write it two ways. He was either able to write that as her end, or he was able to tack something on to make it work. And I think he does, maybe to its detriment, but I also like the fact I've never made any secret to the fact that I love Clara and I've always liked her character. I think that there were some missteps with her character, but I think she's always been a good character. And so I for one thing, was glad that she came back and that wasn't real. Sean, what's your number 4? Since
my number 4, very similar in many ways to my number 5, is Voyage of the Damned.
That's my number 4 as well.
Is it really?
Yeah.
This is just a fun story, and going back on a rewatch, I knew it was Poseidon Adventure, but I'd really kind of forgotten how much Poseidon Adventure it really was. And I know when we reviewed it initially that we talked about that's kind of the thing, is disaster movies on Christmas Day.
Right. That was Russell T Davies' thing. I'll jump in there. That was Russell T Davies' thing. Is he always remembered, at least growing up or in early adulthood, how Christmas Eve was the night or Christmas Day was the night that the BBC or Sky or the other networks there would run these big disaster films. It was a big epic night for disaster films. A Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, those kinds of films would play on Christmas night. And he remembered that, recalled that, and that's why his Christmas specials were always mirrored disaster situations.
It's a fun story, and the disaster elements that are there, I mean, yeah, it's a big disaster. It's in a good way. But I'm struck by the little moments. It's not the end half of it when things are blowing up and people are falling to their deaths and Max Headroom shows up. It's or Capricorn. It's the quiet moments of Christmas on the Titanic. That to me is just a super cool idea, and I think it's beautifully realized. The whole set dressing of it, and then going down and having the conversation with Wilf on the planet surface, and they better leave the Queen alone, not this year. And before we knew who Wilf was, there's just a lot of little things like that, and of course Kylie Minogue. I have a crush on Kylie Minogue still to this day. And so all of that kind of combines for this is just a great little... And when I was rewatching that one, Mel kind of wandered in and out. I think she was doing laundry or something. And each time she would wander into the room, she would linger a little bit longer before she wandered back out, to the final point where she just came in and sat down and watched and was like, I'd kind of forgotten all about this one. This was a really good one. And that kind of reinforced that, it deserves a place on my list. So,
to the point that you think that Last Christmas is grim, I think that of all the specials is the grimmest, and I think it's because of the body count.
Yeah,
and I also think it's because the one guy that you don't want, the one guy you don't want to survive, who's the greedy idiot that ends up surviving all the way to the end. It just piles one death on top of another, one promise. I mean, that's to me, that's the gut punch. Is the doctor in that hallway promises everybody that he's going to get them through it, and then loses them one by one by one by one. But I think it also does a lot for the doctor's character in that the doctor can't always save the day. That others do make sacrifices for them, and that's most apparent with Foof, who takes and Foom, who takes the Cyberman down with her because she's just lost her husband. Balafanaka, I'm not gonna be able to say
you almost had it.
whatever, the little guy, the android guy, giving up his last reserve in order to. So everybody else gets a chance to be a hero. Even to Astrid's point, where she drives the forklift, and even knowing that the brake line's cut, still continues to push Max Capricorn off the edge and plummets to her death. And just even to the end where the doctor says, there's a chance. You get that little moment of hope. There's a chance that I could save her. There's a rescue protocol, but the thing's so destroyed that he can't. So. Still ending on that moment of, well, Astrid does get to travel. She's becomes part of the stars. She's Stardust. She goes on and she'll, never have to fall again. She'll fly. It's real emotionally hard. But you do get that one nugget where we get to drop, and I can't forget the character's name, but the tour guide who has been pretending all along that he's this professor of Earthology, and that, he's been pulling a fast one on the company. When there's inquiries, it's going to find out that he's wrong and he's going to be 10 years in jail. And the doctor takes him down to the planet and says, we'll just retire here. And the revelation of, well, how much do you have on the credit card? And he says, I didn't know. I just put like $1 million on there. I didn't know how much we need, but thinking that's petty cash, only to find out that that's a big chunk of money. And so him being able to get his, retirement after losing everything, being a door-to-door salesman or star-to-star salesman or plant-to-plant salesman, whatever it was. That's a neat moment too. And I
could
really
have a house and a garden.
So you get that moment finally at the end. But all the self-sacrifice, I think, it really comes through that what people are willing to do for others in that kind of situation. Plus the fact that it's the side adventure doesn't hurt. Well, let's move on to number 3, right?
Yeah. My number 3 is The Snowman. Glenn gave me a look.
That's pretty near the bottom of my list. The bottom.
I really enjoyed the Victorian setting. I really enjoyed the Victorian Clara. I liked seeing Eleven's journey from being mopey and broody to being the 11 we know and love throughout the course of the story, being reintroduced to the world. I like the return of the great intelligence. Richard E. Grant as Simeon is fantastic. There's so much in that I just have so much fun while watching that I enjoy the entire ride.
I can't say the highlights of those are Richard E. Grant as Simeon. I think he does a fantastic job. Ian McKellen as the voice of the great intelligence, I think, was a nice touch.
There's some really great humor in the very beginning.
The Paternoster gang really is what makes that one for me. That would lift it up a little bit for me, because I quite enjoy all of them. Especially
I just loved the Victorian Clara so much. I thought she was such a great character and so refreshing that part of why I wasn't as big on the rest of Clara is because I wish that was the version we had gotten throughout the rest of the run.
Agreed.
Sean, what's your number 3?
Not The Snowman. Interesting. I'm going to reverse now. I'm going with Last Christmas.
Oh, okay.
This is my number 3. For all of the reasons that you guys said earlier, I think it's a strong story. I think it's got great characters. I think it's got great characterizations. Inexplicably, I'm with you. I want some science in my Doctor Who. I want just enough to be able to go, and I understand this is not really a science show, but I want enough to be able to go, oh, okay, it's Santa.
Even if it's pseudoscience.
Yeah, even if it's pseudo. Yeah. Make something up. It's Santa. And I am completely okay with that for some reason. And I cannot tell you why. It's Santa. Okay. You just kind of accept it and go on. Quite honestly, the only reason this one's not higher on my list is because of the ambiguous nature of what happens at the end with Clara. Mm. If this had been the swan song, which I've said from moment one, if this had been it, the devastating nature of how this was handled would have been among the pinnacle of the towering achievements of Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who writing. It was such an emotional gut punch and heartbreaking and beautiful and all of those things, and it's a send-off. It's a perfect send-off that we don't get, and that's the one little niggle that's like, oh, this would have been maybe even my number one had it not been for for that. And I mean, it's through nobody's fault. There's, contract negotiations and issue or not, blah, blah, blah. I understand where he had to write it in such a way that he had the option. And in somewhere I have a headcanon that this is it. And that the rest of Claire's adventure with the Doctor didn't happen. But,
Well, we had that tangerine at the end, so, you know, maybe it wasn't actually real. Maybe it was all a dream after that.
Well, you remember us speculating that when we came back to the next season, that the whole season would be a dream.
I'm still grateful that didn't happen. had we gone there,
Moffat's not done yet.
Oh God!
We'll know this time next week.
Well, yeah. What'd be great is if Chris writing back 10 years down the road or something. He's like, "Hey, you want to come write a Doctor Who episode?" He finally comes back, and it's Dream Crab, and it turns out that he's invalidated.
Like everything.
We can't air this. I
know.
I know you can't air it. I just wanted to see if I could do it.
My number 3 is Christmas Invasion.
Really?
Yeah. It's one of those... This was the thing where I knew nothing about David Tennant. I knew enough about Christopher Eccleston because he had been in enough Hollywood films that I knew who he was. He cemented himself as the Ninth Doctor, and I wasn't sure I was going to like him as the Ninth Doctor when I started, but by the end of the series, I absolutely was in love with Christopher Eccleston. Then they announced that David Tennant's in the role now, and he's going to take over at Christmas, and so I'm not quite sure we're going to go with this. And I kind of liked. I was smitten a bit there in the regeneration at the end of the last season with Parting the Ways. He comes on the screen, he's very charismatic, and I thought, okay, maybe I can get behind this guy, but I'm still not quite too sure of him. He hasn't turned me off yet. Only to have this entire story where he's in bed for nearly the whole thing. But I like the idea of the invading force coming down to Earth, taking advantage, sending the pilot fish as the scavenging force to go ahead and check things out, make things okay. I like the fact that Harriet Jones is back and that she is now Prime Minister. I like the insurity of her character and still, holding up the card saying, Harriet Jones, Prime Minister. And everybody, that joke of everyone, yes, I know who you are. Even the main sticker act guy, yes, I know who you are, when she introduces herself to him. I like that. There's a lot of little tongue-in-cheek moments. But I kind of also like the whole, what's going to happen next? What's going to go on here? I liked the gimmick of the blood control. The fact that they've sent this, Voyager-type satellite out into space that's been intercepted by the Sycorax, and they've used the blood type that they put on there to control a third of the population, which is even cooler when it's revealed that it's just a parlor trick, that they can't do anything more because it's like hypnosis. If you don't want to do something, you're not going to do something. And so I think that's a neat little, they kind of pull the rug out of that as well. But you're so worried about that because there's all these people standing on the side of a building. I thought that was very clever writing. But it really ramps up for me when we have this whole discussion about Jackie's obsession with, just you need a cup of tea. You just need a cup of tea. And Rose berating her for that every time. There's bigger things happening here, Mom. You're worried about giving us tea. For that to be the thing that ends up reviving the Doctor and helping him through the rest of his regeneration. But from the moment where Rose is talking to the Sycorax and trying to assert herself and take control here and pretend to be the Doctor so that she thinks she at least she's trying to do something. And I like that about Rose in that situation. She, the Doctor's incapacitated. She feels like she's the last hope. She's going to do something, and she starts spouting out all these different things. But when the Sycorax words start to turn to English, it's still, and I'm just talking about it, I'm getting chills. That's one of those goosebumps moments for me, because when you realize what's going on, and she says, wait, that's English. You're speaking English. I would sully my tongue with your language. And he's literally speaking English. And at that point, you realize, oh, the Doctor's up. And he comes out the door. And from the point that he walks out there on, I was ready to go. I said, this man can be the next Doctor. I love this guy. And it was at that point. And so it's a little bit of that in my heart of going, the reins are in the right hands. This man is going to be an awesome Doctor.
The moment he wakes up is, from that moment on, is the best part of the entire episode.
I would agree with that. The setup for it is great. The sudden trigger that, wait a minute, that was English. And the realization that everybody has. But then the way it's shot with this slow push in past the companions, past the Sycorax, past Rose, to the TARDIS doors, which open, and out steps the Doctor in a bathrobe. And it doesn't matter.
He's Jim Jams.
It doesn't matter because he's the Doctor. He's and so yeah, that's one of those goosebump producing. I don't know about the rest of the episode.
Well,
number 3 on the list,
it really does the battle, the fact that him questioning through the whole time, what kind of what kind of man am I? What sort of man I? Mean, he's exploring. He's asking questions about.
Yeah, all of that is fantastic.
It's just terrific. And then up until the end, where he isn't going to kill the Sycorax, he tells him, run from the planet, leave, don't look back, go away. And then, even to the point that really, I think, sets up the pinnacle of what kind of the 10th Doctor is, to where the Sycorax starts to go to stab him in the back because he's turned on him, and he throws the orange and knocks the piece of which I've always thought was weird, that you just have a piece of your ship that collapses when you push it. But
why would you have that?
That's fine. Why do we even have that lever? Throwing the orange at the leather and dropping him off and saying, that's the kind of man, no second chances, that's the kind of man I am. That, to me, was a cool moment as well. So
yeah.
Good stuff. All right, what's number 2 there, Keith?
My number 2 is The Husbands of River Song.
That's my number 2.
Really?
This, you'll notice a trend on mine. My favorite of the Christmas specials tend to be the ones I have the most fun watching. And this was the swan song to River that I didn't know I wanted or needed.
That's exactly the reason this is my number 2.
There is some highly over-the-top acting, which is, when you think about it, makes some sense to some extent, especially coming from River and the way she has to act to King Hydroflax. But from top to bottom, it's so much fun, and then it hits you with the feels about halfway through once River's talking about how loving the Doctor is like loving a mountain, and you don't expect him to love him back, and he's right there listening to all of this, and just, hello, sweetie, and then it just takes off from there and just gets
more goosebumps
and goes more and more emotional until the very end, and the steps he goes through to give her that final goodbye, knowing that they're at Beryllium and the Singing Towers, is just fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree. It's 100% for everything you said.
And then the punch at the very end of how long's the night? 24 years.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as I thought.
And then that's one of those things. This is a Doctor Who that ends on a high note, and you don't think it's going to end on a high note because you know this is their last night together. But to give that and soften that is so wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice Christmassy moment there at the end.
Yeah.
Plus, Nardal's fun. I mean, he's really fun in this episode. He doesn't do a lot, but he's fun.
I've changed my stance on Nardal since season 10, and going back to this one makes me appreciate Nardal in this more.
Yeah.
And it's not overly Christmassy, which is kind of not in a list of Christmas specials you'd think would make it lesser on the list, but because it's such a strong episode everywhere else, I'm okay with that aspect.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's why I wanted to separate and say, what do we think is the most Christmassy episode?
Yeah.
Because I knew that it might not necessarily fall in our lists of top 5s because of the fact that a lot of the Christmas episodes, when you look at them, have very little to do with Christmas. So, but that's mine for all the same reasons, and I don't think I could say it any better. So what's your number 2 there?
I'm really kind of surprised. I mean, not the River stuff at the end. Yes.
It's so much fun getting to that too.
It's just
I just recently rewatched it because I've been going through Peter Capaldi's run in anticipation of Christmas, and that was one that I've been watching them at work while I'm doing other stuff, so it's been my background noise. And that one I found myself stopping and paying more attention to than like any of the other, a lot of the other episodes lately.
Interesting. My number 2 is The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. I really enjoy that's
another uplifting ending.
It's uplifting. It's very Christmassy, and it's Matt Smith with kids, which is kind of the perfect. I still wish we'd have gotten him with a child companion. That to me is the. In fact, if and when Titan wraps up Alice, that's what I want. I want a child. It's just fun, and the sense of whimsy and this mixture of Willy Wonka-ness that he has with the house, and hot and cold running lemonade, and just how over the top can you get? I know. Just Okay, sure. It's Christmas. At Christmas, all bets are off. You're pretty much allowed to do whatever you want, and I'm just going to let you do whatever you want with it. The Narnia references are a lot of fun. And while the Wood King plot part of it maybe falls down a little bit, by the time we get to the end and we've saved the husband in the airplane, I don't care. I'm kind of a blubbering mess by that point.
I'm going to go out of turn because this is my number one.
Is it really?
This is my number one Christmas special for everything that you said. But also because I think this does encompass the Christmas aspect the best as well. And the reason being is because everything here connects to Christmas, and the fact that she is going to wait till after Christmas to tell the kids that their father is gone, because she wants them to have that one last memorable Christmas before that, because every other Christmas after that is not going to be the same. For the same reason, the doctor is there in order to make this Christmas very special for these kids as well. And the whole wackiness, the wonkiness, as you said, of the house and the toys and the things in the room and the things that do things are wonderful. The Narnia aspect of going into a different world, giving them that gift of escapism for them. And of course, because it's the doctor, escapism turns into calamity. But I didn't even have so much problem with the Wood King thing. I like the idea of them needing a vehicle in order to escape a planet that's just about to be invaded by, unfortunately, at least humanoid type people. I like the fact that because of her, I think there's been some people that have spoke against this because it kind of not sexualizes, it kind of puts a maternal anti-feminist spin on it. But I like the fact that the little girl couldn't be the vehicle because the mother has different experiences, and so that's why she's the best vehicle for it, and that because of her nurturing aspect is why they choose her in order to be the vehicle to escape, for them to escape the planet. So I actually kind of like that. I think that's a clever idea and a clever twist. But I think
don't have a problem with that.
But ultimately, well, there's been some discussion online where that almost typecasts that mom role, and there's people that can better explain it than I could explain it why they feel that way. But I don't think it necessarily goes that route. I don't think it's that heavy-handed. But ultimately, because of this, has another one of those goosebumps moments when they realize that she's able to save the dad. When she's the one that guides him out of peril and brings him home at the end. Ultimately, that's the fairy tale ending for me, and that's what makes that one so special. Is the fact that not only is she able to save him, but the kids do end up having a memorable Christmas that's even better than anything the doctor could have promised them.
I know what your number one is, so I'm going to jump on it before you get there.
All right,
say it together.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3.
Christmas Carol.
Before you guys jump into that, this was my runner-up for number 5. So it almost made my top 5. So there's a lot more underneath there, but it was my runner-up. It was between that and Last Christmas for me on number 5.
I really expected going into this when we started, and your number 5 was The Next Doctor, because Cybermen. I had your list in my head. It was going to be Next Doctor and then Matt Smith.
Oh, no.
That's totally how I thought you were going down the list.
12th Doctor, 11th.
He's got the Cybermen in there and then all Matt Smith. That's how this is going to work out. There's 4 spots.
I can't have the Time of the Doctor in there, Sean. He leaves.
Oh. Well, that could have been number 4.
Anything that would have been 5.
Okay, that could have been 5.
So that was your runner-up 5.
That was my runner-up 5, I guess.
Tell me why Christmas Carol is yours.
Oh, it's just, it embodies to me what Christmas is. I mean, it's such a great adaptation of Dickens's Christmas Carol. It's obviously the first episode I truly watched, so it has a special place there for me. It just hits all the right buttons for me for what I want for a Christmas special. It's just fantastic. I think we've waxed on so poetically out throughout the years about Christmas Carol. I don't know what else there is new to say about how great it is.
I think you're right. I think at this point, it aside from the shock of, wow, they actually are doing the whole thing. They're actually doing a Christmas Carol.
And a great job of it.
And a great job of it. Of all the different... I mean, how many times has a Christmas Carol been done?
Oh, yeah. It's such a unique approach to a Christmas Carol that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
Only that Doctor Who could do.
We've had... Every TV show worth its salt has done the Christmas Carol episode. Was what would happen. Okay, and now Doctor Who has done it, but they did it in this way. But I think more than anything, it's probably the nostalgia factor, because for me, a Christmas Carol, like you, it was your first one, but it's associated with the start of this podcast, and so there's that added bit of all of my current Doctor Who lore. Kind of comes back to this because I was watching the show. I'd watched the show for 5 years before we decided to do this.
Well, I don't think any of us were as engrossed in Doctor Who until we started this podcast.
Yeah,
I mean, we were fans, and I probably maybe a little more than anybody here, but that was kind of the pinnacle that started.
That was the Kickstarter. So there was that added English on the.
And
ball.
even if you go back and listen to my first review of it, and how I had some issues with
who would do that.
I don't know.
Gluttons for punishment.
Some sadist out there. Yeah, and because I remember I had issues with how the time travel was working, of the rewriting of his history. It doesn't bother me now because I love the story so much, and now have a better grasp of how Doctor Who does things,
or how the 11th Doctor does,
or how the 11th Doctor does things.
Hand wave. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, it's just, you don't think about that, and it's not a problem. See, yeah,
yeah. For all of that, it's right there, and I think. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back and watch this because I haven't watched this one.
I haven't watched it this year. I tend to watch it every year.
I haven't watched this one since we recorded our commentary for it.
Oh, that's been 4 years ago.
So I think I'm going to go back and watch it with commentary this year. I'm going to watch our commentary.
With our commentary? Yeah.
Oh, that'd be good.
Just as a lark. I'll see what happens.
You can tell me if it matched up because I never timed it to see if it did.
Oh. Man, now there's work involved.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking a cherished Christmas
Well, if you're going to watch it and
Glenn.
listen to the commentary, all you have to know is, it matched up. That's all you have to tell me.
Well, let's see. That was 4 years ago. It was probably a 3-hour podcast, so I'm going to say probably.
Our commentary should have been exactly as long as the episode was.
Should have been.
Good point.
I know us.
Well, taking everything into account now, not just the top 5, but of all of the Doctor Who Christmas specials that qualify, which do you think is the most Christmassy? Now, I
want to reverse that. I want to do the weakest one first.
You want to do the weakest one first?
Because that way we end on a happy note.
That's a good idea. Let's do the weakest one first.
Shall we do this simultaneously, too? Because I suspect I know where we're going.
Let's try it, because I think we're going to land on it. Ready? One, 2, 3.
The Return of Dr. Mysterio.
Which is sadly the last one that we've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, in chronological order.
Well,
I obviously watched other ones this week, but
it's also the least Christmassy.
It is the least Christmassy.
Because the only bit of Christmas in the entire thing is the very beginning.
And that's all pre-credits, too.
Yes.
Which I didn't realize this until the other day when I was doing some looking into the story. It's the longest pre-credit sequence we've gotten in Doctor Who ever. It's 9 minutes.
Huh.
The longest we've ever gotten.
So I rewatched this pretty recently.
I'm sorry.
In my rewatch, I only got through half of it at work while I was doing other stuff.
I rewatched all these this week. Not all of them. I did skip into time because I knew that one wasn't going to be. That one's like probably second to last.
That was my runner-up.
Yeah. But I didn't even get through 10 minutes of it. I was like, I just can't do it right now. I needed to. Of course, that was after a long run of watching a bunch of Doctor Who, and then I thought, yeah, if I don't get through this one, it's not so bad. I remember this one well enough.
There are some decent things in it. The Doctor is pretty good in it. Nardol's pretty good in it. I'm trying to find the good stuff. One of the issues...
Where's my horn?
One of the big issues with the story is... Okay, so Harmony Shoal, they're carryovers from Husband of the River Song, and they aren't explained.
Yep.
how their carryovers are why.
You said that. That's another Melody Kahn
completely
thing.
dropped. Yep.
Huge issue with the story. And then it's the superhero aspect. It's just, no, it doesn't work.
Which is sad because, especially for me, because I'm a huge fan of superheroes and superhero films and comics. Unfortunately, it felt like I don't mind. I don't.
I'm sorry,
mind,
that was a cheap shot. You got to take that out.
This wasn't dark enough for DC, Sean.
I don't mind when writers pay homage to their favorite things, which I think that's what Stephen Moffat was doing here. Is he was painting homage to superheroes that he grew up with,
Unfortunately,
particularly to the 1970s and 80s Christopher Reeve Superman. Unfortunately, he, for some reason, it just doesn't gel well with Doctor Who, and it almost feels like it's forced.
And it comes across like he's trying to do a parody of it, but it's not very funny.
It does come across as a parody, yeah.
But the superhero bits aren't funny, and it's the cheesy aspects of the 70s stuff. Like, he's trying to make a statement on superhero movies and doesn't succeed in formalizing what that statement is.
It's almost like he didn't know what he wanted to do with it. Is this going to be a parody? Is this going to be
It's almost
homage?
like he
Is
wanted
this
to be
gonna
done
a statement on
and
it?
wanted somebody else to take over this Christmas special, and no one else would.
that could have been it too. I almost wonder,
And that led to a whole other year, Doctor.
I almost wonder if this is one of those, like,
And we had a whole year off.
I know.
had Moffat been able to farm it out and give it to RTD.
Somebody.
He said, dude, I know
Give it to Gatiss. So.
I know you're done, but come back and do the Christmas special. I want to do a superhero thing. You've done the Poseidon Adventure. You know how these work. Come back and... Okay, yeah. Could it have worked? If we're going to go... Maybe that's the problem, is because the Poseidon Adventure is a specific disaster. It's not doing the disaster genre. He's doing a specific disaster
but he's doing
movie.
Titanic, too.
Yeah.
He's doing Titanic and Poseidon Adventure.
But more Poseidon.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a lot more Poseidon to it. But he's using it. He's borrowing elements from Titanic.
But Mysterio is the entire genre of superhero, because we get Spider-Man references and Superman references, and I mean, yes, Superman's kind of the de facto
sure
template, but I don't know. There's a lot that I'm still sour on it, which is unfortunate. But I think it could have worked. I think, but it sure doesn't.
So I booted it up while Sarah was in the shower to kind of, while I was wrapping presents to finish off the episode. And Sarah came out and said, "Ugh, why are you watching that one?" I think that's a pretty good indicator.
Pretty good indicator there.
I really needed to focus on rapping. Well, rats.
All right, so let's go ahead and end on the high note then. What do you think is the most Christmassy? Now, again, to qualify this, it doesn't have to be your favorite. It could be the absolute worst Doctor Who of the Christmas specials. But if it has all of those elements that you can tick off to say, yeah, this is really kind of what a Christmas special is. The elements of Christmas have to be there. I don't want to pin it down too much because I don't want to confine you guys.
Right.
But I think that each of us has a different idea of what Christmassy means when we say that.
So for me, mine is Christmas Carol, even though it is my number one, partially because...
Me too. Even though it's not my number one.
Me three.
Okay, so mainly for me because growing up, one huge part of Christmas was Muppet Christmas Carol. So Christmas Carol is so ingrained in me as part of a Christmas aspect of it. The fact that this is so much an adaptation of Christmas Carol makes this the most Christmassy for me, even though there isn't Santa, there isn't all these other Christmas aspects. The fact that it's such a good adaptation of that story makes it quintessential Christmas.
Well, and I think also the elements there within the story, because it's set at Christmas. And it's reoccurring Christmas, because every Christmas Eve is when they would go to get together and they would have these little adventures together. And so, and because it's formulated to be around that classic story, I agree with Sean. What Sean said is that everybody has their own take on A Christmas Carol, and this is the Doctor Who take on A Christmas Carol, and it's formulated and it's done really well, and it still adheres to the same things that made Dickens' Christmas Carol so special and the epitome of Christmas stories. And I think that's why it works so well as being the ultimate Christmas special. Even though I don't think it's the best one, or I don't think it's my favorite one. I guess I should say it definitely does encompass the elements of Christmas the best.
It does.
Runner-up for me was The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, for some of the same points.
My runner-up would have been Last Christmas, because Santa
Claus.
I mean, what's the requirement for a Christmas special? Santa. Snow, real snow, not like ashes from a dead alien spaceship. Okay, but it's just a little too dark in tone.
Yeah.
For traditional Christmas, and Christmas Carol doesn't. I mean, yes, it has, I guess, some dark moments, but it's so joyous in its presentation and its way that it goes about being a Christmas Carol, that it just, you can't help but go along with it. And it's kind of like the Doctor when he says, I saw on a rooftop, saw a chimney, my whole brain went, what the hell? That's where I'm at with this one. It's like, it's, you know, and it's so good. And then you get to the end and the song. I mean, just,
okay.
Yeah,
it's a gorgeous song.
Yeah, no, it's Christmas.
It is.
And you even get a sleigh ride.
Mm-hmm.
Plus flying fish. Nothing says Christmas like flying fish.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
It says Christmas like sharks.
I'm a responsible adult. It's just a bunch of wavy lines. Finally, a lie too big. It's shorted out.
And it's fun. That's why.
It's so much fun.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed our Christmas special this year. It actually went longer than I thought it would. So I thought it was like a 10-minute episode. Nope, 50. All right.
Wow.
All right. Well, if that's going to do it for this year's Christmas special, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
And Merry Christmas.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.